Good morning. Today's talk is called Free From, prompted by seeing those words in the local supermarket. I think all supermarkets nowadays have a free from section where you can get things for particular diets, gluten-free, dairy-free, wheat-free, and so on. And I'm thinking today about what the mind is free from, or perhaps what the mind needs to be free from. And I'm thinking about this in relation to the third of the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. So the third noble truth is the cessation of suffering, or freedom from suffering. And maybe we think that freedom from suffering, or the cessation of suffering, is something that we may experience a long way off in the future when we get pretty close to enlightenment, as long as we keep up practice for years, decades, lifetimes, however we may see it. And hopefully, of course, that is true. Well, I do think that is true, that we will at some point experience cessation of suffering. But that's seeing it in a more continuous sense, that the cessation of suffering no longer happens. That the cessation of suffering is a continuous experience for us. We have learnt how not to manufacture our own suffering. But apart from that, I think in our ordinary, everyday life experience, in our meditation experience, we all have times when we experience cessation of suffering. The truth of suffering, the first noble truth, I don't think means that we suffer continually all the time. We do have times when we don't suffer. And lately in my practice, I've been making a point of noticing those times when my mind is free from whatever it is that might be causing me some affliction, some trouble. Free of hindrance, free of obstacles. So let's look at these states of mind. We need to get used to the idea of, or we need to get used to the practice of identifying what our mind states are, what kind of mental state we're inhabiting at any particular time, not just in meditation, outside of meditation as well, very much so. If we're experiencing a particularly strong emotion, such as falling in love or being angry, then those are strong emotions, so we notice them, or at least to some extent we know that we're experiencing those emotions. We may not be bringing full mindfulness to them, but we know that they are somehow present because, well, they have a physical presence, don't they, as well as a presence on the mental or emotional level. So when we're in love, we experience all the pleasure of that, the joy of that, perhaps anticipation of being with the object of our love. And maybe also we experience the uncertainty or the fear of losing the object of our love. Being in love goes through different phases, I think. And also being angry, if we become very angry about something, someone or something has upset us, And there's a mental component to that. We have all these thoughts about the object of our anger, what we're going to do in retribution or in response to this upset. And we also feel it very much in our body. We feel a kind of upsurge of fire element, an upsurge of anger. So those things are quite obviously in our experience. We know them when they are in our experience, even though, as I said before, we may not be bringing full mindfulness to the situation. It's perhaps less obvious with more subtle experiences. So do we notice, for example, when anger is not present in our experience? Do we notice when anxiety is not present in our experience? Do we know when craving is not present in our experience? When those things are present in our experience, anger or anxiety or craving, when they are in our experience, then we react to them, don't we, quite strongly. We try and pursue the object of our craving, or we try and push away the object of our anger, or we try to get rid of our anxiety some way. And I think actually it's very, very important to notice when those conditions of mind are not present, because those are situations when we're free from whatever it is. So in those situations we experience a freedom of mind, and I think we need to acknowledge that. We need to bring as much mindfulness to that as we do when we're experiencing the negative emotion or the hindrance or the obstacle. And I think it's important to notice those mental conditions because they are an experience of freedom. Freedom from that which binds us, that which chains us down to limited experience. So I try and make a point now of recognizing those times when anxiety is not present in my experience. And I do have quite a lot of those times now. I'm just trying to acknowledge them so that I fully know, oh yes, this is what it is like to be free from anxiety. So if I can bring about freedom from anxiety, then this is what it's like, and I need to do that again and again. I need to bring about the freedom from anxiety, and then I need to acknowledge, fully recognize, dwell in that state of freedom from anxiety and experience the joy of that, the freedom of that, the openness of that, openness to other experience. And the same with anger or craving or whatever our particular tendency is. And we all have particular tendencies. Some of those tendencies can be quite gross, like we can have a really strong craving for something, whether it's a sexual craving for another person. That's a very strong experience. Or maybe it's a craving for something to eat, something to fill up that inner emptiness, whether we're hungry or not. Sometimes it can be a very subtle kind of craving. Maybe we're meditating in the morning, and maybe we know we've got quite a few things that we want to do on this particular day. And so a part of us starts thinking, I'd better finish meditating soon because I need to get on. Do we need to get on? Well, we may have the constraint of needing to be at work at a particular time. But then we just factor that into our meditation. We give ourselves enough time to meditate before we need to do that. But if we don't need to meditate at a particular time, or maybe we don't need to be at work at a particular time, or maybe we work at home, where timing can be a bit more flexible. And there can be this subtle craving this subtle desire to get on, as we call it, get on with what needs doing. And sure, those things need doing. They're part of our life. But maybe there's also a craving to get away from the experience of sitting with our mind in meditation, which is more subtle, less obvious. So we need to notice these things. Notice when craving or anxiety or whatever is present in its subtle forms as well as its gross forms. And we also very much need to acknowledge and really know those situations when our condition of mind is free from anxiety, free from anger, free from craving, free from suffering of any kind. And I'm sure that we all do experience those mind conditions, but maybe we don't acknowledge them enough. When we acknowledge them, we realize that, yes, I am capable of being free from suffering, even if only for a short time. And the more we recognize that, the more those mind conditions will occur, and we will experience more extended mind conditions when we are free from whatever it is. So I'll stop there, and wishing you a free from day.